Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, staring at the massive holographic display that showed the enemy fleet. Thousands of alien ships filled the space just outside Earth's solar system. Each one was larger than anything humanity had ever built. Their weapons could destroy cities with a single shot. Their shields could stop anything Earth's military could throw at them. "Admiral, incoming transmission from the Hegemony flagship," reported Lieutenant Torres from the communication station. Sarah nodded. She had been expecting this. For 3 days, the alien fleet had been waiting at the edge of their system. The entire galaxy knew what was coming next. It was always the same pattern. The Hegemony would arrive, make their demands, and within hours the target species would surrender. No one had ever successfully resisted them. "Put it through," Sarah ordered. The hologram flickered and changed. Now it showed the bridge of the alien flagship. Admiral Zethkar stood in the center, his tall, reptilian form imposing even through the transmission. His species, the Veltar, had been the first to join the Hegemony 3,000 years ago. They had learned that resistance was pointless. "Admiral Chen of the primitive human species," Zethkar's voice was cold and mechanical through the translator. "I am Admiral Zethkar of the Hegemony Coalition. We represent 12 advanced species and control most of this galaxy." Sarah kept her face calm. Around her, the bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. They all knew this moment would come eventually. Humanity had only been traveling between stars for 50 years. They had built colonies on a dozen worlds and established trade with a few friendly species, but they were nothing compared to the Hegemony. "We have observed your species for some time," Zethkar continued. "You show promise, but you lack guidance. The Hegemony offers you a choice. Surrender now and accept our rule. Your species will be allowed to exist under our protection. Your technology will be improved. Your people will be fed and housed according to Hegemony standards." The alien admiral paused, letting his words sink in. Sarah had heard recordings of similar speeches given to dozens of other species. The Hegemony always presented themselves as benevolent rulers. They claimed to bring peace and order to the galaxy. However, Zethkar's tone grew darker. "If you refuse our generous offer, we will be forced to demonstrate why resistance is futile. Your ships will be destroyed. Your colonies will be occupied. Your homeworld will be bombarded until you beg for mercy." Sarah looked around at her crew. They were good people. The best humanity had to offer. Many of them had families on Earth or the colonies. They deserved better than to become slaves to an alien empire. "You have 72 hours to decide," Zethkar announced. "We suggest you use this time wisely. Contact your leaders. Explain to them that the age of human independence is over. The Hegemony is patient, but our patience has limits." The transmission ended. The bridge fell silent except for the quiet hum of the ship's systems. Sarah stared at the tactical display showing the enemy fleet. Her own forces looked pitiful in comparison. 200 ships, most of them converted cargo vessels with hastily mounted weapons. The Hegemony had brought 3,000 warships, each one a masterpiece of alien engineering. "Orders, Admiral?" asked Commander Park, her second in command. Sarah turned to face her crew. These men and women had volunteered to stand between Earth and the most powerful military force in the galaxy. They knew they were probably going to die, but they were here anyway. "Send a reply to Admiral Zethkar," she said calmly. "Tell him we need more time to consider his generous offer. Ask for a week to consult with our government." Lieutenant Torres looked up from his station. "Admiral, they gave us 72 hours. "Heard him," Sarah replied. "Send the message anyway." As Torres worked to compose the reply, Sarah activated a secure channel on her personal communicator. The device looked like a standard military unit, but it contained technology that officially didn't exist. "Shadow Base. This is Admiral Chen. Authorization code Black 77 Alpha." The reply came immediately. "Shadow Base confirmed. We've been monitoring the situation, Admiral. All stations report ready. Initiate Phase 1 of the Shadow Protocol. Full communication blackout starting in 30 minutes. Understood. Phase 1 commencing. Good luck, Admiral." Sarah closed the channel and looked back at the tactical display. The hegemony fleet was holding position, confident in their overwhelming superiority. They had no idea what was really happening. Commander Park approached her. "Admiral, what's the Shadow Protocol?" Sarah smiled for the first time in days. "Something the hegemony isn't expecting, Commander. Something they've never encountered before." Across the solar system, hidden installations began powering up systems that had been dormant for decades. In the asteroid belt, massive structures disguised as mining operations started revealing their true purpose. On the dark side of the moon, enormous doors slid open to expose launch bays that shouldn't exist. The message was sent to Admiral Zethkar within the hour. His reply was predictably annoyed. "Admiral Chen, the hegemony does not negotiate with inferior species. We have given you more time than you deserve. Use it wisely." But Sarah wasn't planning to use the time for negotiation. All across the solar system, ships were moving. Not the obvious military vessels that the hegemony could see, but other craft. Ships that bent light around themselves, that moved through space without leaving any trace on sensors. On Earth, President Martinez called an emergency session of the World Council. The representatives gathered in the secure bunker deep beneath Geneva. They all knew what was happening above their heads. "Admiral Chen has activated the Shadow Protocol," the president announced. "As of this moment, humanity is at war with the hegemony coalition." Some of the representatives looked terrified. Others seemed resigned to their fate. But a few, those who knew the truth about what humanity had been building for the past 50 years, smiled grimly. The hegemony fleet continued to wait. Their sensors detected increased activity throughout the solar system, but it all seemed consistent, with a species preparing for surrender. Ships were moving, but they appeared to be evacuation vessels. Industrial facilities were working overtime, probably trying to build enough transport capacity for the human population. Admiral Zethkar was pleased with himself. Another species was about to join the hegemony. It was always satisfying when they surrendered without a fight. It saved resources and avoided unnecessary destruction. He had no way of knowing that those evacuation ships were actually carrying exotic matter to weapon systems that could tear holes in spacetime. The industrial facilities were manufacturing ammunition for guns that fired compressed black holes. The transport vessels were actually the most advanced stealth fighters ever built by any species in the galaxy. Sarah Chen stood on her bridge and watched the countdown timer. 68 hours remained until the hegemony's deadline, but the Shadow Protocol had its own timeline, and it was much shorter. "All stations report ready, Admiral," Commander Park announced. Sarah nodded. "Signal all Shadow units, begin Phase 2 in 12 hours, and Commander?" "Yes, Admiral?" "Send another message to Zethkar. Tell him we appreciate his patience and we'll have an answer for him soon." She didn't mention that the answer wouldn't be the one he was expecting. The hegemony had waited 3 days for Earth's surrender. Instead, they were about to discover that humanity had spent 50 years preparing for this moment. They were about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one that refuses to give up. 3 more days passed and Admiral Zethkar was growing impatient. The human fleet remained in position, making no aggressive moves but also showing no signs of preparing to surrender. His tactical officers reported strange energy readings throughout the solar system, but nothing that seemed threatening. "Sir, the humans are moving more ships," reported his intelligence officer, a spider-like creature from the Nexar species. "Our sensors detect increased traffic between their colonies and their homeworld." Zethkar studied the tactical display. Human vessels were indeed moving in unusual patterns, but they looked like civilian transports and cargo ships. Probably evacuating their leadership, he decided. Standard procedure for species about to surrender. On the bridge of the UES Defiance, Admiral Chen was coordinating activities that the hegemony couldn't begin to understand. Her communications officer was in constant contact with installations that didn't officially exist. Ships that weren't on any registry were moving through space using technology that broke every known law of physics. "Shadowbase reports all construction units are now operational," Lieutenant Torres announced. "Cloaking fields are stable across all sectors." Sarah nodded. For 50 years, ever since humanity's first contact with alien technology, they had been preparing for this day. Not openly, the official policy was peaceful exploration and trade. But in secret, in hidden facilities scattered throughout the solar system, humanity's greatest minds had been working on a single project. The Shadow Protocol wasn't just a military plan. It was humanity's insurance policy against exactly this situation. Admiral, incoming transmission from Earth Command, Torres reported. The hologram flickered to life, showing President Martinez in the underground command center. Behind him, Sarah could see the world's military leaders and top scientists. Admiral, what's the status of the Shadow Fleet? The president asked. All units are operational and ready for deployment, Sarah replied. We have full stealth capability, across 2,000 vessels. The hegemony has no idea they exist. President Martinez nodded grimly. The World Council has voted. If we're going to do this, we're committed. No surrender, no retreat. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. 2,000 ships sounded impressive until you remembered that the hegemony had brought 3,000. But numbers weren't everything. The aliens were about to learn that lesson the hard way. Meanwhile, Admiral Zethkar was receiving his own reports. His science officer, a tall, blue-skinned humanoid from the Altaran Collective, approached his command chair. Admiral, we're detecting some unusual readings from the human industrial installations, energy signatures that don't match. They're known technology. Zethkar barely looked up from his tactical display, probably trying to upgrade their defensive systems. A waste of time, but let them try. It will make their surrender more satisfying. The science officer hesitated. Sir, these readings are different. We've never seen anything like them before. Every primitive species thinks they can innovate their way out of conquest, Zethkar replied dismissively. The humans discovered faster than light travel 50 years ago. They're still children playing with toys they don't understand. But the science officer was right to be concerned. Deep in the asteroid belt, massive facilities that had been disguised as mining operations for decades were now operating at full capacity. They weren't mining rocks. They were manufacturing something far more dangerous. The humans had learned something important during their first 50 years in space. Every alien species they encountered had focused on energy weapons and defensive shields. Plasma cannons, laser arrays, particle beams, all variations on the same basic concept. Their defenses were designed to stop other energy weapons, but humans had taken a different approach. While other species were perfecting energy manipulation, humanity had been working on something the galaxy had never seen: weapons that manipulated space-time itself. Sarah walked through the corridors of the Defiance, heading to a section that wasn't on any official ship blueprints. The elevator descended far deeper than it should have, into levels that were shielded from all sensors. Here, in the heart of the ship, was humanity's greatest secret. The shadow core looked like nothing, more than a sphere of perfectly black material, about the size of a basketball. It sat in the center of a chamber filled with exotic machinery that hurt to look at directly. The air around it seemed to bend and twist in ways that made Sarah's eyes water. "Status report," she asked the chief engineer, a woman named Dr. Kim, who had been working on the Shadow project since its beginning. "All systems green, Admiral. The quantum tunnel drive is stable, stealth fields are at maximum efficiency, and the exotic matter containment is holding steady." Sarah nodded. The Shadow core was what made everything possible. It was a miniature black hole, carefully contained and controlled, that allowed the ship to do impossible things: move through space without creating a disturbance, bend light around the hull to become invisible, phase in and out of normal spacetime. Every ship in the Shadow Fleet had one. 2,000 mobile black holes, each one controlled by technology that the hegemony couldn't even detect, let alone understand. "How long until we're ready for full deployment?" Sarah asked. 6 hours, Admiral. All ships report their shadow cores are synchronized and ready. Sarah smiled. The hegemony was about to get the surprise of their existence. Back on the alien flagship, Admiral Zethkar was growing more irritated by the hour. The humans should have surrendered by now. Every other species had folded within days of seeing the hegemony fleet. What made these primitives think they were special? "Sir, we're receiving another transmission from the human admiral," his communications officer reported. Put it through, Zethkar ordered. Admiral Chen appeared on the holographic display, looking calm and confident. Too confident for someone whose species was about to be conquered. Admiral Zethkar, thank you for your continued patience. We've been discussing your offer with our leadership, and we need just a little more time to prepare. Our response. Zethkar's eyes narrowed. Admiral Chen, my patience is not unlimited. You have been given more than enough time to recognize the inevitable. Oh, we recognize it, Sarah replied with a slight smile. We just want to make sure our response is appropriate. The transmission ended, leaving Zethkar staring at the blank screen. Something about the human's tone bothered him. She didn't sound like someone preparing to surrender. She sounded like someone preparing for war. But that was impossible. The human fleet was laughably small and technologically primitive. They had no allies, no secret weapons, no hidden advantages. The hegemony's intelligence network was the best in the galaxy. If humanity had any surprises, they would know about them. What Zethkar didn't know was that humanity's greatest advantage was something the hegemony had never encountered: the ability to keep a secret for 50 years. While other species broadcast their achievements and competed for prestige, humans had learned to hide their most important work. The Shadow Fleet existed in a realm between dimensions, invisible to all sensors, powered by controlled singularities that shouldn't be possible to create. For 5 decades, the best human minds had worked in absolute secrecy, preparing for the day when Earth's independence would be threatened. That day had finally arrived. Sarah returned to the bridge as the countdown timer reached 0. Phase 2 of the Shadow Protocol was beginning. All across the solar system, ships that had never appeared on any scanner were powering up their weapons and preparing to reveal themselves. All Shadow units report ready, Admiral, Commander Park announced. Sarah took her position in the command chair. Signal the fleet. In 12 hours, we show the hegemony what happens when they threaten humanity. The waiting was almost over. Admiral Zethkar paced the bridge of his flagship, his clawed feet clicking against the metal floor. The humans had been stalling for 6 days now, and his superiors were beginning to ask questions. The Hegemony Council expected quick, efficient conquests. Delays made them look weak. Sir, long-range sensors are detecting more unusual energy spikes, his science officer reported. The patterns are getting stronger. Zethkar stopped pacing and studied the display. The energy readings were indeed strange, but they were scattered throughout the solar system. If the humans were trying to build some kind of weapon, they were doing it in the most inefficient way possible. Probably desperate attempts to upgrade their defensive systems, he decided. Let them waste their time. When we attack, their improvised weapons won't help them. What Zethkar couldn't see was the real source of those energy spikes. Hidden in the asteroid belt, disguised as mining equipment, massive shipyards were completing the final stages of humanity's greatest secret. For 50 years, these facilities had been building the Shadow Fleet, one ship at a time. The ships themselves were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They were smaller than traditional warships, but that was by design. Each vessel was built around a shadow core, a contained black hole that allowed it to manipulate space-time in ways that broke every known law of physics. Admiral Chen stood in the main construction bay of Shadow Base 1, watching the final ship roll off the production line. The vessel was sleek and dark, its hull made from materials that absorbed all electromagnetic radiation. When it was powered down, it was completely invisible to sensors. When it activated its shadow core, it could phase in and out of normal space. That's the last one, Admiral, reported Dr. Kim, the chief engineer. 2,000 ships all equipped, with full stealth capability and exotic matter weapons. Sarah nodded. And they still have no idea we exist. The Shadow Fleet represented humanity's greatest achievement and biggest gamble. For 5 decades, the world's governments had poured resources into the project, all while maintaining the appearance of being a peaceful, primitive species. They had reverse-engineered alien technology, improved upon it, and developed entirely new branches of physics. The key breakthrough had come 20 years ago, when human scientists discovered how to create stable micro-black holes. Other species, Had tried this before, but they always approached it as an energy source. Humans realized the real potential was in space-time manipulation. Dr. Kim, are all ships ready for combat deployment? Sarah asked. Yes, Admiral. Every shadow core is synchronized and stable. Our weapon systems are fully charged, and stealth fields are operating at maximum efficiency. Sarah activated her communicator. All shadow units. This is Admiral Chen. Prepare for final phase activation. Target coordinates are being transmitted now. Across the solar system, 2,000 invisible ships received their orders. They had been hiding in asteroid fields, behind planets, and in the empty spaces between orbits. Now they began moving toward the hegemony fleet, their shadow cores bending space around them to remain undetectable. On the alien flagship, Admiral Zethkar was receiving a very different report. Sir, we're detecting massive power fluctuations throughout the human solar system, his tactical officer announced. Whatever they're doing, it's big. Zethkar studied the readings with growing concern. The energy signatures were unlike anything in the hegemony database. They didn't match any known weapon system or defensive technology. Analysis? He demanded. His science officer worked frantically at her console. Unknown, sir. The energy patterns are impossible. They suggest space-time distortions on a massive scale, but no known technology can produce these effects. For the first time since arriving at Earth, Zethkar felt a touch of uncertainty. The hegemony had conquered hundreds of species over the millennia. They had seen every possible form of resistance, every desperate last-minute weapon. But this was different. Send a transmission to the human admiral, he ordered. I want to know what they're doing. The holographic display flickered to life, showing Admiral Chen on the bridge of her primitive warship. But something had changed. She no longer looked like a defeated commander preparing to surrender. She looked confident, almost excited. Admiral Zethkar, she said with a slight smile. Perfect timing. We were just about to send you a message. What are you doing, human? Zethkar demanded. Our sensors are detecting massive energy buildups throughout your system. Oh, that, Sarah replied casually. We're getting ready to give you our answer to your surrender demand. Zethkar's eyes narrowed. Your answer? Yes. Our answer is no. Before Zethkar could respond, something impossible happened. The space around his fleet began to shimmer and distort. Massive shapes began materializing out of nowhere, as if reality itself was being torn open. The shadow fleet decloaked. 2,000 ships appeared simultaneously, surrounding the hegemony fleet in a perfect sphere. They moved with impossible grace, their hulls seeming to bend light around them. They were smaller than the alien warships, but there was something about them that made Zethkar's blood run cold. Impossible, his science officer whispered. Our sensors show nothing. They don't exist. But they clearly did exist. The tactical display was showing 2,000 contact signatures that hadn't been there moments before. Ships that had somehow hidden from the most advanced sensor technology in the galaxy. Sir, incoming transmission from the human fleet, the communications officer reported, his voice shaking. Admiral Chen's image reappeared, but now she was surrounded by holographic displays showing the positions of every ship in both fleets. Admiral Zethkar, allow me to introduce you to humanity's shadow fleet. I believe this is what you call first contact. Zethkar stared at the tactical display in disbelief. His 3,000 ships were completely surrounded by an enemy fleet that shouldn't exist. But the numbers weren't what terrified him. It was the technology. How? He managed to ask. 50 years of preparation, Sarah replied. 50 years of building, planning, and waiting for someone like you to threaten our home. Did you really think we spent all that time just trading and exploring? We were learning. We were preparing. The hegemony sensors were going crazy, trying to analyze the human ships. The readings made no sense. The vessels seemed to exist partially, outside normal spacetime. Their hulls were made from materials that shouldn't be possible. Their power sources generated energy signatures that broke every known law of physics. Sir, those aren't normal ships, the science officer reported. Her voice filled with awe and terror. They're using technology we don't understand. Controlled singularities, space-time manipulation, exotic matter weapons. This is beyond anything in our database. Zethkar felt the first real fear he had experienced in centuries of military service. The hegemony had always won because they had superior technology and numbers, but now they faced an enemy whose technology was completely alien to them. "Admiral Chen," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "This doesn't have to end in bloodshed. The hegemony is always willing to negotiate with equals." Sarah's smile grew wider. "Equals? A few minutes ago, you called us primitive. You threatened to bombard our homeworld until we begged for mercy. Now you want to negotiate?" "The situation has changed," Zethkar admitted. "Yes, it has. You see, Admiral, humans have a saying. Speak softly and carry a big stick. For 50 years we've been speaking very softly. We've been the friendly neighbors, the eager students, the peaceful traders, but we've also been building the biggest stick the galaxy has ever seen. Around the hegemony fleet, the Shadow Fleet held its positions. The alien ships were powerful, but they were designed to fight enemies they could understand. Energy weapons, physical projectiles, electromagnetic shields. They had no defense against weapons that could manipulate the fundamental forces of reality. "What do you want?" Zethkar asked. "That's simple," Sarah replied. "We want you to leave. Pack up your fleet, go home, and never threaten Earth or any human colony again. In return, we won't demonstrate what our weapons can actually do." Zethkar looked at his tactical officers. They were all staring at their displays in confusion and fear. The human ships were doing things that should be impossible, moving through space without generating any detectable energy signatures, phasing in and out of normal reality, creating gravitational fields strong enough to bend light. For the first time in hegemony history, they were facing an enemy whose technology they couldn't understand or counter. The humans hadn't just built a bigger fleet. They had developed an entirely new form of warfare. "I need to consult with my superiors," Zethkar said finally. "Of course," Sarah replied. "Take your time. We'll wait right here. All 2,000 of us." The transmission ended, leaving Zethkar alone with his thoughts and his fear. The hegemony had come to conquer a primitive species. Instead, they had discovered that humanity was far from primitive. They were something new, something dangerous, something that could challenge the established order of the galaxy. The waiting game had just become much more complicated. The hegemony fleet hung in space, completely surrounded by ships that defied everything they thought they knew about physics. Admiral Zethkar had been in emergency communication with the Hegemony Council for 6 hours, and the debate was fierce. "They're bluffing," insisted War Commander Thex Mira of the Krylon Empire. "No primitive species could develop technology superior to ours. Destroy them now before they realize we've seen through their deception." But Supreme Analyst Velkorin of the Nexar Collective disagreed. "Our sensors cannot explain what we're seeing. These ships exist in a state that should be impossible. If they're bluffing, it's with technology we don't understand." Admiral Zethkar watched the human fleet through his view screen. The Shadow Fleet maintained perfect formation around them, each ship positioned with mathematical precision. They weren't moving, weren't charging weapons, weren't doing anything threatening. They were simply there, waiting. "Admiral Chen," he transmitted, "the Hegemony Council requires a demonstration of your capabilities before any decisions can be made." Sarah's response was immediate. "Of course, I was hoping you'd ask. Shadow Fleet, select target Hegemony 7749. Disable only. I repeat, disable only." Zethkar quickly checked his tactical display. Hegemony 7749 was one of his heavy cruisers, positioned on the outer edge of his formation. It was one of their most advanced warships, protected by shields that could stop planet-killing weapons. What happened next changed everything. One of the human ships simply disappeared, not moved quickly or activated stealth systems. It vanished from reality completely. A moment later, it reappeared inside the cruiser's shield perimeter, occupying the same space where the alien ship's weapon systems were located. The impossible happened. Instead of a collision that should have destroyed both vessels, the human ship seemed to exist in the same space as part of the cruiser. Sethkar watched in horrified fascination as the Shadow Fleet vessel extended something that looked like tentacles of pure darkness into the alien ship. "Sir, we're receiving a distress signal from Hegemony 7749, his communications officer reported. Their entire weapon array just stopped working. All systems are shutting down one by one." The human ship phased back out of the cruiser and returned to its position in the Shadow Fleet formation. The disabled alien vessel was still intact, still alive but completely helpless. Its weapons were dead, its engines were offline, and its shields had collapsed. "How?" Sethkar whispered. Admiral Chen's voice came through the communication system. "Our ships can phase in and out of normal space-time. When we phase into a solid object, we can selectively interact with its internal systems. We can disable your weapons without harming your crew. We can shut down your engines without breaching your hull. We can do this to every ship in your fleet, simultaneously." The implications were staggering. The Hegemony's entire military doctrine was based on superior firepower and defensive systems. But what good were weapons and shields against an enemy that could simply phase through them? "This is impossible," Sethkar's science officer reported. "They're manipulating space-time on a level we didn't think was achievable. They're not just bending physics, they're rewriting it." Sarah's voice continued. 50 years ago, when humanity first encountered alien technology, we realized something important. Every species in the galaxy has developed along similar paths. Energy weapons, electromagnetic shields, faster-than-light travel based on space folding. You all think the same way. Sethkar was beginning to understand. But humans think differently. Exactly. While you perfected energy manipulation, we focused on space-time manipulation. While you built bigger guns, we learned to phase through reality itself. While you created stronger shields, we developed weapons that ignore shields entirely. The disabled cruiser was a sobering demonstration. The Shadow Fleet had neutralized one of the Hegemony's most powerful warships without firing a shot. They had simply reached inside it and turned off its systems like flipping a light switch. "Admiral," Sethkar said carefully, "what assurance do I have that you won't use this technology for conquest?" Sarah's image appeared on his view screen again. "Because that's not who we are, Admiral. Humans have a concept called defensive warfare. We don't conquer others, but we won't be conquered either. Your fleet came here to force us into submission. Our response is to show you that submission is not an option." Sethkar looked at his tactical display. 3,000 of the galaxy's most advanced warships, rendered helpless by technology they couldn't comprehend. For the first time in Hegemony history, they were outmatched. "Sir, incoming priority transmission from the Council," his communications officer announced. The hologram showed the emergency session of the Hegemony Council. 12 species, the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy, all arguing at once. War Commander Thexamira was demanding immediate attack. Supreme Analyst Velkorin was advocating for retreat. Others were suggesting negotiation, alliance, or even surrender. Admiral Sethkar, spoke Chancellor Mordun of the Alteran Collective, the Council's current leader. "What is your assessment of the human military capability?" Sethkar chose his words carefully. "The humans have developed technology that makes our weapons and defenses irrelevant. They can disable our ships at will without destroying them. If they chose to destroy us, I believe they could do so without significant losses." The council chamber fell silent. For 3,000 years, the Hegemony had been the dominant force in the galaxy. They had never encountered a species that could challenge them technologically. However, Sethkar continued, they appear to have no interest in conquest. They simply want us to leave them alone. "Unacceptable," War Commander Thexamira declared. "No species can be allowed to possess technology superior to the Hegemony. We must capture their secrets or destroy them completely." "With respect, War Commander," Sethkar replied, "I don't believe we can do either. Their technology is beyond our understanding, and they have enough ships to match our entire fleet." Supreme Analyst Velkorin accessed her data files. "Admiral, Our intelligence reports suggested humanity had only 200 primitive warships. Where did 2,000 advanced vessels come from? They've been building them in secret for 50 years, Zethkar explained. While we thought they were a peaceful species focused on trade and exploration, they were actually preparing for war. We completely underestimated them. Chancellor Mordoon made a decision. Admiral, you are authorized to begin withdrawal negotiations with the humans. The hegemony cannot afford a war we cannot win. But War Commander Thex Mira was not finished. This is cowardice. The hegemony does not retreat from primitives. These are not primitives, Zethkar said firmly. They are possibly the most advanced military force in the galaxy, and they're offering us a chance to leave with honor intact. The debate continued, but Zethkar had heard enough. He closed the channel and opened a direct communication with Admiral Chen. Admiral, I believe we can reach an understanding, but I need you to know that not all members of the Hegemony Council agree with peaceful resolution. Sarah nodded. We're prepared for that possibility, Admiral, but we'd prefer to solve this without violence. Humans have a saying, it's better to be feared than loved, but it's best to be respected. You have my respect, Zethkar admitted. And my fear. Your technology could reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. That's not our goal, Sarah replied. We just want to live in peace. But we've learned that sometimes peace requires strength. The Shadow Fleet is our strength. Zethkar looked at the disabled cruiser floating helplessly in space. Its crew was alive and unharmed, but their ship was completely neutralized. The humans had demonstrated ultimate power with ultimate restraint. What are your terms for our withdrawal? He asked. Sarah smiled. Simple. Leave our space, don't come back, and don't threaten any human colonies. In return, we'll pretend this never happened. No one needs to know that the mighty hegemony was outmatched by a species you thought was primitive. It was a generous offer. The humans could have demanded tribute, territory, or technology transfers. Instead, they were offering the hegemony a face-saving withdrawal. But Zethkar knew that War Commander Thex Mira and her faction would never accept such terms. The hardliners would prefer to fight and die rather than admit defeat to a primitive species. The real test was about to begin. The emergency session of the Hegemony Council had been going on for 12 hours. Admiral Zethkar watched the holographic display as 12 species argued about humanity's ultimatum. Half wanted to negotiate, half wanted to fight, and none of them could agree on anything. War Commander Thex Mira slammed her clawed hand on the council table. We cannot show weakness. If we retreat from these primitives, every conquered species will think they can challenge us. Supreme Analyst Velcorin displayed her data files. War Commander, the humans are not primitives. Their technology is more advanced than ours. Fighting them would be suicide. Then we die with honor, Thex Mira roared. The Krylon Empire has never retreated from battle. Chancellor Morden of the Altaran Collective tried to maintain order. The question is not about honor, it's about survival. If these humans can disable our ships at will, what hope do we have in combat? Admiral Zethkar had been silent through most of the debate, but now he spoke up. I've been studying the human fleet for hours. Their technology doesn't just surpass ours, it makes ours obsolete. They can phase through our shields, disable our weapons without destroying us, and appear anywhere they want instantly. He paused, looking at each council member. But more importantly, they're showing restraint. They could have destroyed my entire fleet by now, but they haven't. They want us to leave peacefully. War Commander Thex Mira's eyes blazed with fury. Admiral Zethkar, you sound like a coward. Are you afraid of these hairless apes? Yes, Zethkar replied honestly. I'm afraid of them. And you should be too. Fear of a superior enemy is wisdom, not cowardice. The council continued to argue, but Zethkar could see that public opinion was shifting. News of the confrontation was spreading throughout hegemony space. Other conquered species were watching to see if the mighty hegemony could be defeated. Meanwhile, Admiral Chen was dealing with her own challenges. Earth's leadership was nervous about the long-term implications of revealing the Shadow Fleet. "Admiral, what happens after this?" President Martinez asked during their secure communication. "We've shown our hand. The entire galaxy will know that humans have advanced military technology." Sarah considered the question carefully. "Mr. President, we've been hiding our capabilities for 50 years. But hiding only works if no one threatens us. The hegemony forced us to reveal ourselves. And now? Now we face the consequences. Some species will fear us, some will try to ally with us, and some will try to steal our technology. We'll need to be ready for all of those possibilities." Dr. Kim, the chief engineer, joined the conversation. "Admiral, we could share some of our less sensitive technology with friendly species, help them defend themselves against hegemony expansion." Sarah nodded. "That's a good idea, Doctor. If we're going to change the balance of power in the galaxy, we should make sure it changes in the right direction." Back on the hegemony flagship, Admiral Zethkar received an urgent message from one of his subordinates. "Sir, we're detecting movement in the Krylon battle group. War Commander Thex Mira has broken formation and is approaching the human fleet." Zethkar cursed under his breath. The Krylon were always the most aggressive members of the hegemony. Thex Mira had obviously decided to test the humans' resolve. "Open a channel to the Krylon flagship," he ordered. Thex Mira's reptilian face appeared on the hologram. "Admiral Zethkar, I am done waiting. The Krylon Empire will show these primitives the price of defying the hegemony. War Commander, you're making a mistake. The humans have superior technology. Don't throw away your ships and crews for pride." "Pride is all we have left," Thex Mira replied. "If we cannot conquer them, we can at least show them that the hegemony fights to the end." The transmission cut off, and Zethkar watched helplessly as 200 Krylon warships broke formation and charged toward the human fleet. On the bridge of the UES Defiance, Admiral Chen received the tactical update. "Admiral, 200 alien ships have broken formation and are moving to attack," reported Commander Park. Sarah sighed. She had hoped to resolve this peacefully, but some people only understood force. "Shadow Fleet, intercept the Krylon attack. Force, disable their ships but avoid casualties if possible." What followed was not a battle. It was a demonstration of absolute technological superiority. The Shadow Fleet ships phased through space, appearing inside the Krylon formation without warning. They moved through the alien ships like ghosts, reaching into their hulls to disable weapons, engines, and life support systems. Within minutes, 200 of the galaxy's most feared warships were floating dead in space. Their crews were alive, but powerless, their vessels reduced to metal coffins. War Commander Thex Mira's flagship was the last to be disabled. A single Shadow Fleet vessel phased directly into her bridge, its dark hull occupying the same space as her command chair. Tendrils of pure darkness reached out and touched every control panel, every weapon system, every piece of technology on the ship. "Impossible," she whispered as her ship died around her. The Shadow Fleet vessel's commander appeared as a hologram. "War Commander, your ships are disabled, but your crews are safe. This is your only warning. Any further aggressive action will be met with lethal force." Admiral Chen opened a communication channel to all hegemony forces. "This is Admiral Chen of the Terran Defense Force. We have demonstrated that we can disable your ships without harming your people. But our restraint has limits. Any further attacks will be answered with the complete destruction of the attacking force." The message was broadcast throughout the hegemony fleet and transmitted back to the council chambers. The reality of humanity's military superiority was now undeniable. Chancellor Morden called for an immediate vote. All in favor of accepting the human terms and withdrawing from their space? 8 species voted for withdrawal. 3 voted to continue fighting. The Krylon Empire predictably abstained since their representative was now trapped on a disabled ship. "The motion passes," Morden announced. "Admiral Zethkar, you are ordered to begin immediate withdrawal from human space." Zethkar felt a mixture of relief and shame. Relief that his people would survive. Shame that the mighty hegemony had been defeated without firing a shot. "Admiral Chen," he transmitted, The hegemony accepts your terms. We will withdraw immediately. Sarah appeared on his view screen one final time. Thank you, Admiral. I hope this is the beginning of a new relationship between our peoples, one based on mutual respect rather than conquest. You have taught us something important today, Zethkar replied. Perhaps it is time for the hegemony to reconsider our methods. The withdrawal took 3 days. The massive alien fleet, with their disabled ships in tow, departed Earth's solar system and disappeared into hyperspace. They left behind a changed galaxy. News of the confrontation spread quickly. Dozens of conquered species began to whisper about resistance. The hegemony's reputation for invincibility was shattered. Some member species began to question their loyalty to an alliance that could be defeated by a single planet. Admiral Chen stood on the observation deck of the Defiance, watching the last hegemony ships disappear into the distance. The Shadow Fleet had returned to its hiding places, invisible once again but ready to deploy at a moment's notice. What happens now, Admiral? Commander Park asked. Sarah smiled. Now we get back to being the friendly neighbors. But if anyone else decides to threaten Earth or human colonies, they'll discover that the Shadow Fleet is always watching. President Martinez's voice came through the communication system. Admiral, we're receiving contact requests from dozens of species. Some want to establish diplomatic relations. Others want to join a defensive alliance against hegemony expansion. That's good, Sarah replied. The galaxy needs to know that there are alternatives to conquest and submission. Dr. Kim joined them on the observation deck. Admiral, what should we do about our technology? Other species will try to develop their own shadow fleets. Sarah considered the question. We'll share defensive technology with species that prove they'll use it responsibly. But the Shadow Core technology stays with humanity. That's our insurance policy. The Shadow Fleet had changed everything. For the first time in galactic history, a species had successfully resisted hegemony conquest. The age of unopposed alien expansion was over. Humanity had spoken softly for 50 years, building their strength in secret. When the time came to use that strength, they had done so with precision and restraint. They had won without seeking conquest, defended without becoming oppressors. The galaxy would never be the same again, and somewhere in the darkness between stars, 2,000 Shadow Fleet vessels waited patiently, ready to remind anyone who might forget that Earth's surrender was never an option. The hegemony had waited for humanity to bow. Instead, they had learned that some species refused to kneel. Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the viewing port of the transport ship, watching the strange blue-green world grow larger ahead of them. Kepler 442b looked peaceful from space, with its swirling white clouds and 2 small moons. But Sarah knew that looks could be deceiving. After 30 years in the Earth Defense Force, she had learned not to trust anything that seemed too good to be true. Admiral, we're getting final clearance from the orbital station, Lieutenant Rodriguez called from the communications console. They're directing us to Docking Bay 7. Sarah nodded but kept her eyes on the planet below. 3 months ago, the message had arrived at Earth's capital. The Galactic Consortium wanted to talk peace. After decades of Cold War border fights and tension, the 12 alien species that ruled most of known space were offering humanity a treaty. It was the opportunity Earth had been waiting for, but it also felt wrong. Dr. Webb, what do you think? Of their choice of meeting place? Sarah asked the man standing beside her. Dr. Marcus Webb was Earth's best expert on alien behavior. He had spent 20 years studying every species in the consortium. Webb adjusted his glasses and frowned. Kepler 442b is technically neutral territory, Admiral. No species claims it. But it's awfully close to 3 major consortium military bases. If I were planning a trap, this is where I'd set it. My thoughts exactly. Sarah turned to face her team. 12 humans against representatives from 12 alien species. The odds had never been in humanity's favor, but somehow they had survived this long. The docking process took an hour. The consortium station was massive, bigger than anything humans had ever built. As their shuttle moved through the docking tube, Sarah could see alien ships of every design. Sleek Veltar cruisers, massive Torg battleships, and the crystal-like vessels of the Harmony Collective. Ambassador Williams, the lead diplomat, was reviewing his notes one more time. The initial offer seems generous, Admiral. Trade routes, technology sharing, even some territorial concessions in the outer ring. Almost too generous. That's what worries me, Sarah replied. She had read the preliminary treaty documents 3 times. The consortium was offering humanity things they had been fighting for decades to achieve. Either the aliens had suddenly become very friendly, or they were planning something. The docking clamps engaged with a heavy thunk. Through the porthole, Sarah could see alien figures waiting in the bay. Tall, graceful Veltar with their silver skin, stocky Torg in their environmental suits, and others she recognized from intelligence reports. Remember the mission brief? Sarah told her team. We're here to negotiate, but we keep our eyes open. Trust nothing, question everything, and assume we're being watched at all times. The airlock opened, and humanity stepped onto alien ground. The consortium delegation was led by Supreme Arbiter Kethvar, a Veltar whose silver skin had the deep polish that came with age and authority. He stood, nearly 8 feet tall, with the characteristic elongated limbs and large eyes of his species. When he spoke, his voice had the musical quality that all Veltar possessed. Admiral Chen, Ambassador Williams, honored guests of humanity, Kethvar said, spreading his 4 arms in what humans had learned was a gesture of welcome. We greet you in the spirit of peace and cooperation. Sarah kept her expression neutral. Supreme Arbiter, we appreciate the consortium's invitation. Humanity hopes these talks will lead to a better future for all species. The ceremonial greetings took another hour. Each species had its own rituals, and diplomacy required showing respect for all of them. Sarah endured the crystal song of the Harmony, the ritual combat dance of the Crix, and the meditation circle of the Zentar. It was all very civilized and proper. Too proper, perhaps. Dr. Webb was taking notes on everything, just as he always did. But Sarah noticed he was using a special pen, one with a tiny camera built into it. He was recording not just what the aliens said, but how they moved, how they looked at each other, how they breathed. The humans were given quarters in the station's diplomatic wing. The rooms were comfortable, with furniture adjusted for human size and artificial gravity set to Earth normal. Sarah's room even had a viewport showing the planet below. Too comfortable, she muttered to herself as she checked the room for listening devices. She found 3. That evening, the first formal session began in the station's great hall. The chamber was circular, with each species having their own section. Humans sat in simple chairs while the Torg delegation used massive stone blocks, and the crystal beings of the Harmony had no furniture at all. Supreme Arbiter Kethvar stood at the center of the room. For too long, our species have viewed each other with suspicion. The consortium extends its hand to humanity not as conquerors but as partners. The treaty terms were even better than the preliminary offer. Humanity would gain access to consortium trade networks. They would receive technological exchanges that could advance Earth's science by centuries. Most importantly, the constant military pressure on human colonies would end. This is unprecedented, Ambassador Williams whispered to Sarah during a break. They're offering us everything we've ever wanted. Sarah watched the alien delegations. They seemed pleased, confident. The Torg war leader was actually smiling, which was something Torg rarely did. The Crix delegation kept making their clicking sounds that indicated satisfaction. Dr. Webb approached them during the break. Admiral, I need to show you something, he said quietly. The behavioral patterns are all wrong. He led them to a quiet corner and opened his notebook. Look at these readings. Veltar normally show stress through changes in their skin color. It gets darker. But Kethavar's skin has been getting lighter all day. That usually means excitement or anticipation. Maybe he's excited about peace, Williams suggested. Webb shook his head. Not this kind of excitement. This is the same pattern I observed when studying Veltar hunters before they made a kill. And look at the Torg delegation. He pointed across the room. See how they keep checking their risk computers? Torg only do that when they're coordinating military actions. Sarah felt a cold weight in her stomach. What about the others? The Cricks are displaying mating colors, which they only do when they're anticipating a great victory. The Harmony Collective keeps humming in B-flat minor, their death song, and the Zentaur haven't entered meditation even once today. For a species that meditates constantly, that suggests they're preparing for violence. The pieces were falling into place. Sarah had suspected a trap from the beginning, but the evidence was mounting. How long do we have? The ceremony to sign the final treaty is in 6 days, Webb said. Based on these behavioral patterns, I'd guess that's when they plan to make their move. Sarah nodded. She had been hoping her suspicions were wrong, but Dr. Webb's observations confirmed her fears. The generous treaty offers, the perfect location, the comfortable accommodations, it was all designed to make humanity lower their guard. What do we do? Williams asked. He looked pale. As a diplomat, he had believed in the possibility of genuine peace. We play along, Sarah said. We act like we suspect nothing. We negotiate in good faith, and we use every second of the next 6 days to figure out exactly what they're planning. She looked around the Great Hall at the alien delegates. They thought they were clever. They thought humans were naive and trusting. They were about to learn that humanity's greatest strength had always been its paranoia. Sarah smiled for the first time since arriving at the station. The aliens wanted to play games? Fine. But they were playing against a species that had survived ice ages, world wars, and the journey to the stars by assuming the worst about everyone and everything. The consortium thought they were setting a trap. They had no idea they were walking into one. The second day of negotiations began with a tour of the station. Supreme Arbiter Kethvar personally guided the human delegation through what he called the greatest achievement of interspecies cooperation in galactic history. Admiral Sarah, Chen walked beside him, nodding politely at his explanations while her eyes catalogued every detail. The station was indeed impressive. Over 50 levels, housing nearly 1 million beings, with advanced technology that made human engineering look primitive. But Sarah was not interested in being impressed. She was looking for weaknesses. The central core contains our main computer systems, Kethvar explained as they passed a heavily guarded section. All station operations are controlled from there. Security, life support, communications, everything runs through the central network. Dr. Webb asked innocent questions about the computer systems while secretly scanning with a device hidden in his medical bag. Behind them, Lieutenant Rodriguez was taking pictures with a camera disguised as a water bottle. Every member of the human delegation had been trained for intelligence gathering. The defensive capabilities are minimal, of course, Kethvar continued. This is a diplomatic facility. We have only basic shields and a small security force. Sarah almost smiled at the lie. Her enhanced vision, a military implant that the aliens didn't know about, could see energy signatures throughout the station. There were weapon emplacements hidden behind decorative panels. The civilian areas were filled with soldiers in disguise, and those basic shields were powerful enough to stop a fleet. During lunch, Dr. Webb shared his findings with the team through hand signals they had learned before the mission. Hidden weapons everywhere, at least 3 companies of soldiers. Energy readings suggested much more military hardware than they were being shown. Ambassador Williams looked sick. They're going to kill us all, aren't they? That seems to be the plan, Sarah replied calmly. She had expected this. The question was what humanity could do about it. That afternoon, the negotiations continued. The consortium representatives presented more generous offers. Access to their medical technology could extend human lifespans by decades. Their energy systems could solve Earth's power needs forever. Their terraforming knowledge could turn dead worlds into gardens. All we ask in return, said Supreme Arbiter Kethvar, is humanity's commitment to peace, a promise to end the conflicts that have troubled our borders. Sarah translated this in her head. They wanted humanity to lower its defenses, to recall the battle fleets, to make Earth and the colonies vulnerable. While the aliens talked, Sarah activated a device hidden in her uniform collar. It looked like a simple communication badge, but it was actually a quantum transmitter. The signal would reach Earth instantly, regardless of distance. 3 taps. Pause. 5 taps. Pause. 3 taps. Code Omega. The trap is confirmed. Proceed with the backup plan. 24 hours later, Earth received the signal. Admiral Marcus Thompson, Sarah's oldest friend and the head of Earth Defense Command, read the message and immediately activated protocols that had been planned for months. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced to the assembled fleet commanders, "Operation Honest Abe is now active." Honest Abe was named after Abraham Lincoln's famous quote, "You can fool all the people some of the time and some of the people all the time, but you cannot fool all the people all the time." It was humanity's response to the possibility that the peace treaty was a trap. Across human space, ships began moving. Not the obvious warships that the consortium was watching, but the hidden ones. Freighters that were actually disguised battleships. Mining platforms that were really weapons platforms. Civilian transports filled with Marines instead of passengers. The plan had 3 parts. First, make the consortium think their trap was working. Second, gather intelligence on their technology and tactics. Third, be ready to hit back harder than they could possibly imagine. Back on the station, Sarah's team was doing their part. Dr. Webb had identified the behavioral patterns of each alien species when they were preparing for combat. The Veltar, skin changes. The Torg, coordination signals. The Krix, victory displays. He was documenting everything in what looked like a simple research journal. Lieutenant Rodriguez had mapped the station's layout and identified all the hidden weapons. He did this by pretending to be fascinated by the architecture and asking for detailed tours of interesting areas. Commander Singh, who was officially listed as a security advisor, was actually one of Earth's best Special Forces operators. She had been studying the alien guards, learning their patrol routes and equipment. She even made friends with some of them, using her natural charm to extract information about their training and tactics. Meanwhile, other human operatives worked on different missions. Engineer Park, disguised as a trade representative, was analyzing alien technology and looking for weaknesses. Dr. Santos, the mission's medical officer, was secretly studying alien biology to find information that might be useful in combat. On the 3rd day, something interesting happened. A consortium supply ship arrived at the station, carrying what appeared to be diplomatic gifts for the ceremony. But Sarah's enhanced vision could see through the containers. They weren't gifts, they were weapons, advanced alien weapons being stockpiled for the trap. That night, Sarah sent another quantum signal to Earth. This time, the message was more detailed, transmitted in a code that looked like routine diplomatic reports. The consortium had at least 12 cloaked warships in the system. They were planning to strike during the signing ceremony, when all the human leadership would be in one room. Simultaneously, fleets hidden near Earth and the colonies would attack. The goal was complete destruction, not just of the human government, but of human civilization. Admiral Thompson read the report and smiled grimly. The consortium was thorough. He had to give them that. They had planned for every contingency they could think of. Unfortunately for them, humans were very good at thinking of contingencies that others missed. On the 4th day, Dr. Webb made his most important discovery. While analyzing alien behavior patterns, he noticed something the consortium didn't realize they were revealing. Each species had its own way of communicating with their fleets. The Veltar used subtle skin color changes that their distant ships could read through telescopic cameras. The Torg used tapping patterns on their wrist computers. The Krix used scent markers that their ships could detect even in space. By observing the alien delegates, Webb could tell when they were sending orders to their fleets. More importantly, he could tell what kinds of orders they were sending. The attack command would be unmistakable when it came. Sarah was impressed. "Can you intercept their communications?" "Better than that," Webb replied. "I can predict them. Each species follows patterns based on their psychology. I can tell you what. They're going to order before they give the command. This was the breakthrough humanity needed, not just to know the attack was coming, but to know exactly when and how it would happen. On the 5th day, Sarah sent her final report to Earth. The ceremony would begin at 1400 hours, station time. The trap would spring at 1430, just as she reached for the pen to sign the treaty. The signal to attack the colonies would go out at 1435. Admiral Thompson read the message and nodded. All stations, this is control. Operation Honest Abe moves to final phase. All assets report ready status. Across human space, the responses came back. Ready, ready, ready. The consortium thought they were hunting sheep. They were about to discover they had cornered a pack of wolves. On the station, Sarah's team prepared for the ceremony. They had their dress uniforms cleaned and pressed. They reviewed the treaty documents one more time. They behaved exactly like diplomats getting ready for a historic signing, but hidden beneath their formal clothes were weapons and armor. Concealed in their ceremonial briefcases were devices that would turn the aliens' own station against them, and most importantly, they knew exactly what was coming. The night before the ceremony, Sarah stood at her viewport, looking down at the planet below. Tomorrow, the consortium would learn something about humanity that all of Earth's enemies eventually discovered. Humans were very, very good at surviving, and when survival meant fighting back, there was no species in the galaxy that fought harder or more cleverly than the children of Earth. The trap was set, but not the one the aliens thought. The Great Hall had been transformed for the ceremony. Banners from all 13 species hung from the ceiling. The signing table sat at the center of the room, made from crystal that came from the Harmony homeworld. Cameras from across the galaxy were recording everything. This would be the most watched diplomatic event in galactic history. Admiral Sarah Chen entered the hall wearing her dress uniform, with its simple blue fabric and silver insignia. She looked small compared to the alien delegates in their elaborate ceremonial garb. The Veltar wore robes of shifting silver. The massive Torg were covered in decorated battle armor. The crystal beings of the Harmony reflected light in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Today marks a new beginning, Supreme Arbiter Kethvar announced to the assembled crowd. His voice was broadcast across the galaxy. For the first time in galactic history, humanity joins the community of civilized species as true partners in peace. Sarah walked to her designated position at the signing table. Around the room, her team took their places. Dr. Webb sat with the scientific observers. Lieutenant Rodriguez stood with the security detail. Commander Singh was positioned near the exit, as protocol required for the ranking security officer. Everything looked exactly as it should. The humans appeared relaxed and honored to be there. The aliens seemed pleased with their successful diplomacy. The ceremony proceeded according to the carefully planned schedule. At exactly 1425 hours, Sarah reached for the ceremonial stylus. It was made from rare metal from 12 different worlds, symbolizing unity among the species. Her hand was steady as she lifted it. At 1430 hours, the trap sprung. Energy barriers slammed down around the human delegation, trapping them in the center of the hall. Hidden panels in the walls slid open, revealing weapon emplacements that had been concealed during the tour. Alien soldiers poured into the room from concealed entrances, their weapons aimed at the humans. Supreme Arbiter Kethvar's musical voice turned cold and sharp. Humanity, you have walked willingly into your doom. Sarah looked up at him calmly. She did not seem surprised or afraid. Have we? Kethvar ignored her question and continued his speech. It had obviously been prepared in advance. Your species has been judged by the consortium. You are too violent, too unpredictable, too dangerous to exist alongside civilized beings. Today your leadership dies. Your fleets are being destroyed as I speak. Your colonies are burning. Earth itself will be reduced to ash. He gestured to screens around the room. They showed images of consortium fleets attacking human positions. Earth's orbital stations were under bombardment, The Mars colonies were being invaded. The outer settlements were surrounded by alien warships. Humanity's aggression ends here, Kethvar declared. Your species will serve as an example to any others who might threaten the peace of civilized space. Sarah set down the stylus and stood up slowly. An example? Yes. I think humanity will definitely be an example today. The Supreme Arbiter frowned. Humans should be begging for mercy by now. They should be offering to surrender. Instead, Admiral Chen looked almost amused. You do not understand, Kethvar said. Your entire species is being exterminated. There is no escape, no rescue, no hope. Oh, I understand perfectly, Sarah replied. You've been planning this for months. The generous treaty offer was bait. This station is a trap designed to eliminate human leadership. Your fleets have been positioned to strike our world simultaneously. It's actually quite clever. Her calm manner was making the aliens nervous. The Torg war leader stepped forward, his massive form towering over the humans. Then you know you are defeated. Surrender, and we will make your deaths quick. Sarah looked around the room at her trapped team. Dr. Webb was still taking notes in his journal. Lieutenant Rodriguez was checking his watch. Commander Singh was examining her fingernails. None of them seemed frightened. I have a question, Sarah said to Kethvar. Did your intelligence services ever study human behavior patterns? Of course. We know you are an aggressive, paranoid species. These traits made you easy to manipulate. Paranoid, Sarah repeated thoughtfully. Yes, we are definitely paranoid. Do you know what paranoid people do when someone offers them something that seems too good to be true? Kethvar's silver skin was beginning to darken, the Veltar sign of confusion or worry. They suspect deception. Exactly. And do you know what paranoid people do when they suspect deception? The Supreme Arbiter didn't answer. Around the room, other alien delegates were beginning to look uncomfortable. The humans' behavior was completely wrong. They should be terrified. Sarah smiled. Paranoid people prepare for the worst possible scenario. She tapped her communication badge 3 times. It was the same quantum transmitter she had been using to send reports to Earth. But this time the signal was different. The humans in the energy cage began to flicker and fade. Like television images losing signal, they became transparent, then disappeared completely. Holograms, Sarah's voice said from the empty cage. But the voice was coming from speakers throughout the station. Did you really think we would send our actual leaders to a meeting that was obviously a trap? Kethvar stared at the empty energy barrier. Impossible. Our sensors confirmed human life signs. Your sensors detected exactly what we wanted them to detect, Sarah's voice replied. The real human delegation has been safely aboard our ships for the past 3 days. We've been watching your preparations through hidden cameras and feeding you false readings through the projectors. Panic began spreading among the alien delegates. If the humans weren't trapped, then where were they? The answer came from throughout the station. Hidden panels opened in walls, floors, and ceilings. But instead of more alien soldiers, human commandos emerged. They had been moving through the station's maintenance tunnels for hours, taking positions at every critical system. While you were watching our holograms, Sarah's voice continued, our real teams were taking control of your station. Your weapon, systems, your shields, your communications, all under human control now. The screens showing consortium victories over human forces flickered and changed. The images had been fake too. Instead, the screens now showed the real situation in human. Space Earth's orbital defenses were not destroyed. They were fully active and firing at consortium ships. The Mars colonies were not being invaded. They were launching fighter squadrons that had been hidden underground for months. The outer settlements were not surrounded by alien fleets. They were revealing defensive platforms that had been disguised as asteroid mining operations. You see, Sarah's voice explained, humans are not just paranoid. We are also very good at lying. Every piece of intelligence you gathered about our military capabilities was carefully crafted disinformation. Our real strength has been hidden for decades. The battle footage showed consortium fleets in full retreat from every human system. Ships that the aliens thought were cargo haulers were revealing themselves as heavily armed Q ships. Space stations that appeared to be civilian were transforming into fortress platforms. Even human freighter convoys were dropping their disguises to become military formations. Supreme Arbiter HFY tried to activate his personal communicator to call for help. Nothing happened. His commands to the station computer were ignored. Even the artificial gravity was under human control. Your trap was well planned, Sarah admitted. But it had one fatal flaw. You assumed that humans would react the way you expected. You never considered that we might be several steps ahead of you. Throughout the station, alien soldiers were surrendering to human forces. The hidden human teams had moved with perfect coordination, using their knowledge of the station's layout to capture every critical location simultaneously. Dr. Webb's voice joined the broadcast. Every behavioral pattern you displayed, every communication method you used, every psychological profile of your species. We've been studying you as carefully as you thought you were studying us. We knew what you were planning almost before you did. The screens showed more devastating footage. Consortium fleets throughout the galaxy were being ambushed by human forces that had somehow appeared out of nowhere. Ships that had been tracking human movements for months were being attacked from directions they hadn't expected. The lesson here, Sarah's voice said, is that if you are going to set a trap for humanity, you had better make sure it is a perfect trap. Because if you fail, if we survive, if we get the chance to turn the tables, we will not show you the mercy you intended to show us. Commander Singh's voice came through the speakers. Actually, that is not quite true. We are not like you. We will show mercy. HFY looked up hopefully. Perhaps humanity could be negotiated with after all. Here are our terms, Sarah continued. The consortium will immediately order all remaining fleets to surrender. You will provide complete intelligence on your military capabilities and government structures. You will return to your homeworlds and await further instructions from Earth. And, if we refuse? The Supreme Arbiter asked, though his voice was barely a whisper. Then we continue demonstrating why it was a bad idea to try to exterminate us, Singh replied cheerfully. The screens showed human fleets that had somehow materialized near every major consortium world, weapons platforms that had been hiding. The human commandos moved through the station like they had built it themselves. In a way, they had. The past 6 days of reconnaissance had given them complete knowledge of every corridor, every system, every weakness in the alien structure. Commander, Singh led Alpha Team toward the central computer core. Her team moved in perfect silence using hand signals and equipment that made no sound. Behind their face masks, they looked calm and professional. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were humanity's best special forces operators, trained for exactly this kind of mission. Core security in 30 seconds, Singh whispered into her throat microphone. Her voice was transmitted instantly to every human team throughout the station. In the reactor control room, Lieutenant Rodriguez was working with a small device that looked like a medical scanner, but instead of checking for illness, it was rewriting the station's computer code. Every security protocol, every safety system, every automated defense was being turned against its creators. Reactor control secured, he reported. Beginning upload of virus package Alpha. Dr. Webb had been right about alien behavioral patterns, but he had also been working on something else during the negotiations. While appearing to take simple notes about alien psychology, he had actually been designing the most sophisticated computer virus in human history. The virus was not just a program, it was a psychological weapon designed specifically for each alien species. It used their own instincts and mental patterns against them. When Veltar computer operators saw the virus, their brains interpreted it as something beautiful and harmless. Torg systems read it as routine maintenance code. The crystal beings of the Harmony thought it was a song. Package Alpha is spreading through their networks, Rodriguez reported. Estimated time to complete system penetration, 4 minutes. Throughout the station, alien technicians stared at their screens in confusion. Their computers were behaving strangely, but the error messages were formatted in ways that each species found reassuring rather than alarming. The virus was spreading, invisibly through every connected system in the consortium network. Meanwhile, Admiral Sarah Chen was no longer just a voice on the communication system. The real Sarah Chen stepped out of a maintenance hatch directly behind Supreme Arbiter Kethvar. "Hello, Supreme Arbiter," she said politely. "I thought we should meet in person." Kethvar spun around, his silver skin flashing through several colors as his emotions shifted from shock to fear to rage. "How did you get aboard the station?" "The same way my teams got here. We came with the delegation, just not the way you expected." Sarah was wearing simple combat armor instead of her dress uniform. Her sidearm was drawn but not aimed at anyone. "Did you really think we would travel to an obvious trap without backup?" The truth was even more elaborate than the aliens had imagined. The human delegation that had arrived 6 days ago had actually been 3 separate groups. The diplomatic team, which had been holograms from the beginning. The reconnaissance team, which had been gathering intelligence while pretending to be simple staff members. And the assault team, which had been hiding in specially modified sections of the human transport ship. "While your people were watching our fake diplomats," Sarah continued, "our real teams were mapping every inch of this station. We know where your weapons are hidden, where your soldiers are stationed, and most importantly, where all your computer systems connect to the galactic network." Dr. Webb emerged from another maintenance access, his scholarly appearance unchanged except for the military-grade tablet he was carrying. "The virus has reached 17 consortium worlds," he reported. "Their fleet coordination systems are beginning to fail." On screens throughout the station, the evidence was undeniable. Consortium ships were losing formation as their navigation computers malfunctioned. Some were turning their weapons on each other as the virus convinced their targeting systems that friendly ships were enemies. Others were simply shutting down as their crews became unable to understand their own controls. "What have you done?" Kethvar demanded. "We have introduced chaos into a system that depends on order," Webb replied calmly. "Your consortium works because all your species communicate through predictable patterns. Our virus disrupts those patterns, making it impossible for you to coordinate large-scale military action." The virus was spreading faster than any biological plague. Every time a consortium ship tried to communicate with another ship, it passed on the infection. Every time a planetary government sent a message to their fleet, the virus gained access to new systems. But humanity's masterpiece was not just technological, it was psychological. The virus was designed to make each species doubt the others. Veltar ships received false reports of Torg betrayal. Crick's forces got fabricated evidence of Harmony treachery. The crystal beings heard distorted songs that convinced them their allies were planning their destruction. "Your alliance is dissolving," Sarah observed as the screens showed consortium fleets turning on each other across the galaxy. 12 species held together by shared dominance over the rest of the galaxy. Take away that dominance, add a little suspicion, and the whole structure collapses. Supreme Arbiter Kethvar tried once more to access his command systems. The screens responded, but instead of showing him fleet positions and battle reports, they displayed something else. Complete recordings of every meeting the consortium leadership had held while planning the human genocide. "We have been recording everything," Dr. Webb explained. "Every plan, every order, every discussion about exterminating humanity. These recordings are being broadcast on all frequencies throughout the galaxy. Every species will know exactly what the consortium intended to do." This was perhaps the most devastating blow of all. The consortium had ruled through diplomacy and the threat of overwhelming force, but their authority depended on other species believing they were reasonable and just. The recording showed them planning mass murder in cold, calculating detail. "Public opinion is turning against you," Sarah continued. "Species that have been your allies for centuries are breaking their treaties. Your puppet governments are facing revolutions. Your trade partners are closing their borders to consortium ships." The screens showed the evidence. Riots on consortium, worlds, alien governments declaring independence, entire sectors of space rejecting consortium authority. The virus had not just disrupted their military coordination, it had destroyed their political legitimacy. But humanity was not finished. On the screens, new footage began playing. It showed human colonies that the consortium thought had been destroyed. But instead of burning cities and dead civilians, the videos showed something impossible. The colonies were not just intact. They were thriving. Earth's orbital defenses were not damaged. They were stronger than they had ever been. The human military was not scattered and defeated. It was larger and more advanced than any intelligence report had suggested. Every piece of information your spies gathered about human military capabilities was false, Sarah explained. We have been feeding you lies for decades. Our real strength was hidden in deep space, in asteroid fields, in systems you never bothered to explore. The footage showed the truth. Massive shipyards hidden inside hollowed-out asteroids, battle stations disguised as mining platforms, entire fleets that had been constructed in secret and kept dark for years, waiting for the day they would be needed. We learned paranoia from Earth's history, Dr. Webb added. Every civilization that survived did so by preparing for invasion, by assuming the worst, by never trusting that peace would last. We have been preparing for this war since the day we first met the consortium. Supreme Arbiter Kethvar sank into one of the ceremonial chairs, his silver skin now completely dark with despair. You have destroyed us. No, Sarah corrected. You destroyed yourselves. We simply gave you the opportunity to do it. The virus had reached its final phase. Across the galaxy, consortium governments were receiving the same message on every screen, in every language, through every communication system. The Galactic Consortium attempted to commit genocide against humanity. This attempt has failed. Effective immediately, all consortium military forces will stand down. All consortium officials will report to the nearest human representative for processing. Any resistance will be met with the full force of Earth's military. The galaxy has seen what happens when someone tries to exterminate humanity, Sarah said. We do not conquer, we do not occupy, we do not impose our government on others, but we will not allow anyone to threaten our existence. She gestured to the screens, which now showed human fleets throughout consortium space. Not attacking, not destroying, but simply present. A demonstration of power that made further resistance pointless. Your choice is simple, Sarah concluded. Accept the new reality, or discover what humanity is capable of when we stop holding back. The consortium that had ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years had been dismantled in less than 4 hours. But humanity's real test was still to come. What they would do with victory. The battle was over in 3 hours and 17 minutes. Across the galaxy, consortium fleets surrendered as their coordination systems failed and their governments collapsed. But in the Great Hall of the diplomatic station, Admiral Sarah Chen did something that surprised everyone, including her own people. She offered Supreme Arbiter Kethvar her hand. Get up, she said simply. Kethvar stared at the human hand extended toward him. His silver skin was still dark with defeat and confusion. Around him, his fellow consortium leaders sat in stunned silence, waiting to learn their fate. I do not understand, Kethvar said. That's the problem, Sarah replied, her hand still extended. You never understood humanity at all. You saw aggression and assumed we were mindless killers. You saw paranoia and assumed we were cowards. You saw our independence and assumed we were chaos. Slowly, hesitantly, Kethvar took her hand and allowed her to help him stand. But you missed the most important thing about humans, Sarah continued. We are capable of change. We learn from our mistakes, and we can choose mercy even when we have the power to destroy. Dr. Webb stepped forward, his scholarly manner unchanged even in the aftermath of their victory. Admiral, Earth Command is requesting confirmation of the consortium leadership's surrender. They're asking what terms we want to impose. Sarah looked around the room at the defeated alien delegates. 12 species that had ruled the galaxy through fear and overwhelming force. They had planned to commit genocide, to erase humanity from existence. By all the rules of galactic politics, they deserved no mercy. Tell Earth Command that we're offering the consortium a choice, Sarah said. They can face justice for war, crimes, or they can help us build something better. The alien delegates looked at each other in confusion. Mercy was not something they had expected from the species they had tried to exterminate. "What do you mean?" asked the Torg war leader, his massive form still intimidating despite his defeat. "I mean," Sarah said, "that humanity is not interested in ruling the galaxy. We never were. We just wanted to be left alone to grow and explore in peace." She activated the room's communication system, but instead of connecting to Earth, she opened a channel to every inhabited world in known space. "Citizens of the galaxy," her voice broadcast to billions of beings across hundreds of worlds. "Today, the Galactic Consortium attempted to commit genocide against humanity. This attempt has failed." The screens throughout the room showed alien faces across the galaxy, some afraid, some hopeful, some confused. For most species, this was their first indication that the war had even happened. The consortium justified their actions by claiming that humanity was too violent and dangerous to exist alongside civilized species. Sarah continued. "They used this fear to maintain their control over all of you. But I want you to see what humanity chooses to do with victory." She gestured to the defeated consortium leaders. "These beings ordered the extermination of every human man, woman, and child in the galaxy. Under the laws of war, they could be executed. Under the justice of revenge, they should be destroyed. But humanity chooses a different path." "Supreme." Arbiter Keithavar looked up at her in amazement. "You are offering us amnesty?" "I am offering you redemption," Sarah corrected. "The consortium system is finished. Your rule through fear and domination is over. But the galaxy still needs leadership, and despite your crimes, many of you have skills and knowledge that could help build a better future." Dr. Webb activated his tablet, displaying a document that had been prepared during the long journey to the peace conference. "The Terran Accords," he announced, "a new framework for galactic governance based on cooperation rather than domination." The document that appeared on screens throughout the galaxy was nothing like the old consortium charter. Instead of a hierarchy, with one species ruling over others, it proposed a federation where each world would have equal representation. Instead of military might determining policy, decisions would be made through democratic processes. "Any species can join the federation," Sarah explained. "Any world can leave if they choose. No one will be forced to obey laws they had no voice in creating. And most importantly, no species will ever again have the power to threaten another with extinction." The alien delegates read the document in shocked silence. It was everything the consortium had never been: fair, democratic, protective of individual rights. "Why?" Keithavar asked. "Why offer this to those who tried to destroy you?" Sarah smiled, and for the first time since the crisis began, she looked genuinely happy. "Because that's what humans do. We fight when we're threatened, but we build when we're safe. We've spent our entire history learning from conflict and choosing cooperation." The communication channel was still open to the entire galaxy. Sarah's words were being heard by every species on every world. "The Terran Federation will protect any species that chooses to join," she continued. "We will share our technology freely. We will help worlds that need assistance. And we will guarantee that no species will ever again face the threat of genocide." Lieutenant Rodriguez stepped forward with another device, this one designed to broadcast on frequencies that could reach every ship in space. "All consortium military forces, this is Admiral Chen of the Terran Federation. You have a choice. Continue following orders from a government that no longer exists, or help us build a better galaxy." The response was immediate. On screens throughout the hall, they could see consortium ships across the galaxy, lowering their weapons and signaling their intent to surrender. But more than that, many were requesting permission to join the new federation. The Crick's Fourth. Fleet requests permission to assist with humanitarian aid to displaced populations, one report showed. The Veltar Science Division offers to share medical technology to help repair war damage, read another. The Harmony Collective wishes to contribute to the new galactic communication network. Species after species, world after world, the old consortium was transforming itself into something new, not because they were conquered, but because they were offered a chance to be part of something better. Dr. Webb looked up from his tablet with amazement. "Admiral, we're receiving applications to join the Federation from over 300 worlds, including several species that were never part of the consortium." Sarah nodded, unsurprised. Fear kept the old system together, but hope is much stronger than fear. Supreme Arbiter Kethvar stood and looked around the room. His silver skin was beginning to brighten again, not with the anticipation of violence, but with something he had never felt before. Genuine hope for the future. "The Veltar hegemony formally requests membership in the Terran Federation," he announced. "And I personally request permission to serve in whatever capacity might help repair the damage I have caused." One by one, the other consortium leaders stood and made similar declarations. The Torg war leader offered his military expertise for peacekeeping operations. The Krix delegate requested assignment to humanitarian missions. Even the crystal beings of the Harmony pledged their unique abilities to the new government. Sarah looked out the viewport at the planet below. Kepler 442b, which had been chosen as neutral ground for a trap, was now becoming the birthplace of a new galactic civilization. "There's one more thing," she said, activating the communication system again. "The Federation will be headquartered here, on this world. But we won't be governing from a military station floating in space. We'll be building a real city on the planet's surface, where beings from every species can live and work together." The final image broadcast to the galaxy showed the construction plans for the new Federation capital. Not a fortress or a military base, but a genuine city with parks, schools, hospitals, and homes. A place where the children of former enemies could grow up as friends. As the broadcast ended, Sarah looked around the great hall one more time. The banners of the consortium still hung from the ceiling, but they would soon be replaced with the symbols of the new Federation. The ceremonial table where she was supposed to sign humanity's death warrant would become the place where dozens of species signed a treaty of genuine peace. Dr. Webb approached her with a final report. "Admiral, Earth Command reports that our hidden fleets are standing down. The deception networks are being shut down. We're beginning the transition from a military operation to a civilian government." Sarah smiled. "Tell them that humanity's greatest victory wasn't defeating the consortium. It was choosing what to do after we won." 6 months later, the city of New Harmony was taking shape on the surface of the world that had once been chosen for humanity's execution. Humans worked alongside Veltar, Torg, and dozens of other species to build a capital that belonged to everyone. Admiral Sarah Chen, now Secretary General of the Terran Federation, stood on the balcony of the government building and watched alien children playing in the park below. Some were human children, some were young Veltar, and some were species that had never even been part of the old consortium. They were all laughing. Dr. Webb joined her on the balcony, carrying a report on the Federation's first year of operation. "The integration is proceeding better than we hoped," he said. "Turns out that most species prefer cooperation to conflict when given the choice." "Most species are like humans," Sarah replied. "They want to be safe, to